Thanks to all of you for being here. Jay Mart, let me start with you and these poll numbers. President underwater in his handling of Iran and the economy, but it speaks to just how unpopular this war is right now.
Well, and it's why President Trump is so urgently trying to get a deal to get out of this war. You know, he's driven by two things, as we've all learned by now: media coverage and the markets. In the last couple of weeks, he got good coverage and the markets were green because it seemed like the ceasefire was going to hold. But as these things do tend to happen, the Iranians have a vote as well. They have leverage. It's called the Straits of Hormuz. They close it down. And here we are again. We're back to Trump threatening retaliation, which only prolongs this war and keeps the oil markets unsteady, which only ensures political volatility for his party here going into the summer and the fall. So we're kind of back to square one as we sit here today on Sunday. I just think this president desperately wants to stop this war. If you read Josh Dawsey and Linsky in the Journal story over the weekend, it's pretty clear he does not want to be Jimmy Carter. He clearly wants to find a way to end this war. It's just not obvious how he does that and saves face without getting something on nuclear enrichment.
Jimmy Carter's example, legacy looming large over, as you say, Jay Mart, so much of how the president is approaching this next phase of the war. Yes, negotiations are starting, Sarah, but still so many questions about what happens next with the strait closed. What do you see in the numbers?
Well, I think, you know, if you look at, there's like a double whammy for him in here. You have a weak job approval on the economy, weak job approval on the war. And I think as you think ahead to November, we need to be talking about affordability as a party. And when we're talking about foreign policy, we're not talking about that. And so it presents a very difficult political situation that also sort of cuts across the enthusiasm gap. And that's something that has been pronounced in this early part of primary season, where Democrats are more enthusiastic. And this is not helping that.
And Ashley, it's so notable. There is an interesting dynamic playing out for Democrats as well. According to this poll, you see support for Israel-Palestinians equalized. And we saw this playing out in Capitol Hill as well, where 40 out of 47 Democrats voted against arms sales to Israel, including everyone who's considering running in 2028. How do you see this dynamic playing out on the campaign trail? We saw it play out in 2024, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that the Democratic Party is in the midst of an identity crisis. The party is polling, high 20s, and it's not because of the Republicans. It's because there's a real gap between where voters are on the ground and where the Democratic Party leadership is. You know, the Republicans went through their own reckoning in 2020 after the election and confronted their issues, but the Democratic Party at this point is unwilling to do that. And I think that is a problem. And you could see it on Israel, but you also see it on the funding of DHS during the middle of the shutdown, on affordability, where Mayor Mamdani was ahead of the party and the party had to catch up to him. So this is a real problem for the party in terms of this identity crisis, but they're not willing to confront. They can't change what they're not willing to confront. And we've seen it now spill over into the DNC meeting that just happened this past week, where there's an uproar about the fact that they did not release the autopsy. And so my point is this: the only way you can have that reckoning and have alignment and come out stronger is you've got to release this autopsy so we can know what's really undergirding the losses in the last presidential.
So that's your call, release the autopsy.